What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to make a video talking about who is the next title challenger in each separate division. We just had Shavkat Rakhmonov get booked against Belal Muhammad. We all know that Max Holloway's fighting Ilia Topuria. Stipe Miocic is fighting John Jones. But I kind of want to talk about who the rightful next title challenger is for each individual UFC division, and I want to talk about everyone who is not booked right now. So Stipe Miocic wouldn't be the next title challenger. It'd be the next person in the line. It wouldn't be Shavkat Rakhmonov. It would be the next person in line, and that's kind of what I talk about today. And if there isn't a fight book, I want to talk about who genuinely would be next in the pecking order to receive a title shot from the UFC organization in the respective division. I think that there's so many rightful fighters to undoubtedly get a UFC title shot right now, and genuinely I think that there are a lot of fights to make to have number one contender fights, to be able to make title shots, and some great fights to come along with it. But if you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow. And while you're down there in a nearby description, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys can always stay notified about the most recent UFC content that comes out daily. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video and talking about the rightful title challenger for each respected UFC division next. So first off, I want to start in the UFC Flyweight division, and who is the rightful Flyweight challenger right now? And it is undoubtedly, in my mind, Brandon Raw Dog Royval. Brandon Royval just came off a massive win this past weekend against Tatsuro Taira, who was currently 16-0, now 16-1 against Brandon Royval, who is a great fighter inside the organization. He last got a title shot at UFC 296 not that long ago, last December, in a kind of lopsided fight against Alexandre Pantoja. He just kind of kept getting sucked into those takedowns, which are very hard to do when you're fighting someone like Pantoja, who's got an iron chin, and it's probably a very bad matchup for Brandon Royval. But Royval looks so good considering in this last fight he beat an undefeated prospect coming up who he says will be champion in the very near future, and is something that I could 100% see. But also he beat Brandon Moreno in Mexico City in an amazing fight at UFC Mexico City in February of this year. Brandon Royval is an amazing fighter. He 100% deserves to get the title shot at 125 next after Alexandre Pantoja defends against Kai Asakaru at UFC 310. Royval 100% needs to be in the pecking order next, and he said he will go anywhere to fight either Asakaru or Pantoja and then his next one. In the UFC Bantamweight division, I know there's a lot of debate right now with Sean O'Malley wanting to get the title and Umar Nurmagomedov thought to be the rightful contender at 135. But who really deserves to get the title between these two individuals? Because it's a very interesting thing. But going between these two, I do think it needs to be Umar Nurmagomedov 100%. Sean O'Malley got beat too bad against Merab Dvalishvili. In my opinion, it wasn't even that close. I know that Sean O'Malley says that he won 3 rounds against Merab, and he knows he could beat Merab, but with that type of performance that he had, in my opinion, it was 49-46 to Merab Dvalishvili. I think you put Umar Nurmagomedov in there, and you make Sean O'Malley fight someone like Corey Sandhagen, which would be an incredible fight to be inside the UFC Bantamweight division. But I do think that Umar Nurmagomedov versus Merab Dvalishvili has more layers to it than that fight with Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is just going to be defending for the takedown, praying for his life that Merab doesn't get him down for the feet, and I think it's something that Sean O'Malley just needs time. He would 100% beat Merab Dvalishvili sometimes because he would be able to catch him a couple times. But on that night, he wasn't able to beat Merab. And truly, I do think that Umar Nurmagomedov has a better style to beat Merab, considering that he is a Taekwondo master on the feet, but he's also got great grappling and sambo ability on the ground, training at Eagle MMA under Khabib Nurmagomedov. Ultimately, I do 100% believe that Sean O'Malley is still in the bantamweight title picture, but he definitely does not deserve the title shot right now, considering that he just came off a loss to Merab Dvalishvili and a very dominant loss and win by Merab. Now I think that Umar needs to get the title shot up next. At 145, who do I really think should get the UFC 145 title shot, considering that Ilia Topuria is the current champion? We have Max Holloway fighting Topuria at UFC 308. Who would be next in line after this? And I think the only logical solution would be going with Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski was the rightful champion for so long, and I do think that giving him a UFC title shot yet again is something that you 100% should do. He 100% paid his dues inside the organization. This fight with Holloway and Topuria is a massive fight, and either way this fight goes, you're either going to have Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski 4, or you're going to do Ilia Topuria versus Volkanovski 2, which either one of those fights would be some absolutely massive fights to be put on inside the UFC organization right now. Volkanovski is one of the greatest UFC featherweights, if not the greatest UFC featherweight of all time, considering that he has so many different title defenses. He's defended against Max Holloway twice. He won off Max Holloway. He defended against Brian Ortega. He defended against Yair Rodriguez. He defended against Korean Zombie. He is an absolute master in that UFC featherweight division, and he 100% deserves a respectful second shot at the UFC title, considering of how long and of how active of a UFC champion he was. In the UFC lightweight division, who should face Islam Makhachev next? There has not been a specific thing gone out, but there's a very big speculations around the organization that Arman Tsarukyan would be the next title challenger. And do I believe that is true and that's who that should be? 100% I do believe that's true. Arman Tsarukyan's win over Charles Oliveira at UFC 300 was a massive win for Tsarukyan, considering that Oliveira is such a tough opponent. I wish that fight was 5 rounds, and that really needed to go. I wish these two actually rematched for a number 1 contender, because that fight was so close and could have gone either direction. There was kind of debating of who really won that fight between those two individuals, but genuinely, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan was an amazing fight. Arman got the win, and I do think that the second fight with Islam Makhachev, which the first fight was really close between these two individuals, is in the making, considering of how good Arman is, how dominant Islam has been in his career, and Arman Tsarukyan is 100% the number 1 contender inside the UFC lightweight division. He's a great grappler. He's got great striking ability. He's got everything that you could possibly ask for inside the UFC lightweight division. And going up against Islam, that is one of the hardest challenges you could ever ask anyone in the lightweight division to do. But if anyone's going to be able to beat Islam Makhachev, I had to bet that it's going to be Arman Tsarukyan. And that's 100% why I believe that he deserves the title shot next. Now, in the UFC welterweight division, this is a little bit more cluttered, considering that Shavkat just got booked up with Belal. In my opinion, Shavkat was 100% the number 1 contender inside the UFC welterweight division. But who would be the number 2 contender? Because Leon Edwards is coming off a loss to Belal Muhammad, losing his belt. Kamaru Usman is coming off 3 losses, 2 to Leon Edwards at UFC 278, 286, and 294 to Khamzat Chimaev in the middleweight division, which he took up on short notice. But who else would be in this division? I think the next challenger would be the winner, possibly, of 3 different fighters. And obviously, yes, I know you can't have a fight with 3 different fighters, but you could put Jack Della Maddalena on there. I think that he is such a rightful contender inside the organization. He is so good, beating Gilbert Burns in his last one. I think Sean Brady is 100% deserving of this title shot, considering that the only person he has lost to, the only blemish on his record, is to the current UFC champion, Belal Muhammad. In that fight, Sean Brady is such an amazing fighter. In that performance against Gilbert Burns, he looked so very good. And the last guy, I know you guys don't like him, that would be Ian Machado Gary. Ian Gary's got to beat 1 or 2 more really good opponents, possibly a Kamaru Usman, possibly a Leon Edwards, possibly a Jack Della Maddalena, or a Sean Brady. Ian Gary is also right there in that title picture, and truly, I think that either Jack Della Maddalena, Sean Brady, Ian Gary all deserve themselves inside the UFC title shot picture, considering that they're all up-and-coming fighters. They're all kind of on that road right outside the title shot inside the welterweight division, and either one of them 100% have a deserving case to grab the UFC title shot next. Now, inside the UFC middleweight division, we got a little bit of controversy here because of who I believe should get the title shot next. Might not be who's at hand. I do think that Sean Strickland is going to get the title shot next, and I have no opposition against that. The only reason I'm going to have some opposition is if Robert Whittaker goes out there and destroys Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 294. That would be 3 consecutive wins for Robert Whittaker over Paulo Costa this year at UFC 298 as the co-main event, beating Ikram Iliskerov at the UFC Saudi Arabia Fight Night, which he took on 1 week's notice, which he was originally scheduled to fight Khamzat Chimaev. And then he came back and said that he wants to fight Khamzat. He wants to derail that hype train. So we took up that fight again as the co-main event of UFC 308 in a 5-round banger. Truly, that fight is something that I wouldn't expect Whittaker to take. He was in a position where he didn't have to fight Khamzat. He could have fought someone who was higher up in the pecking order, possibly a Sean Strickland and Nasruddin Imavov, someone like that. But Robert Whittaker wants to show that he is the man who will fight anytime, any person, anywhere. And I do think that needs to be respected upon, considering of how good Whittaker is as a fighter. I truly do believe that Robert Whittaker should get the UFC middleweight title shot next, if he does dismantle Khamzat Chimaev very quickly and just break that hype train at UFC 308. But I do think that Sean Strickland, he definitely has a rightful challenger. He definitely has the shot to get the UFC middleweight title shot, considering that UFC 297, he lost a razor close split decision to the current champion, Dricus du Plessis. And at UFC 302, even though it wasn't the most exciting fight, he went out there and beat someone like Paulo Costa. So right now, I would put Robert Whittaker just over Sean Strickland if he can go out there and beat Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 308. But if he can't do that, Sean Strickland 100% trumps everyone else in the UFC title shot picture at middleweight. Now, in the UFC light heavyweight division, I think that the only really, it's a very interesting thing because I would say Magomed Ankalaev undisputedly, but if he loses to Alexander Rakic at UFC 308, I don't think that you give Rakic a title shot either, and obviously you wouldn't get Magomed a title shot, but I do think the rightful answer is Magomed if he wins 100%. That's the person to make. But if Magomed doesn't win, I really don't know who you give the title shot to inside the UFC. Maybe there's this upcoming fight that's going to be Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prochazka, and maybe you give Jamal Hill another shot if he wins. But I would say Magomed Ankalaev, if he beats Alexander Rakic, will 100% secure himself a title shot against Alex Pereira. I know that Ankalaev isn't the most exciting fighter. He fought Jan Blachowicz at UFC 282 in Las Vegas, Nevada. That came to a split decision as the main event. That card kind of fell apart considering that he was headlined by Yuri Prochazka versus Glowit Teixeira 2, and ultimately Yuri had to pull out with that massive shoulder injury he had. But genuinely, I do think that Magomed Ankalaev is the next person in that light heavyweight division to get the title shot if he beats someone like Alexander Rakic. And if Magomed Ankalaev loses, I'm going to be honest, the light heavyweight division is in such a chaos point right now that I don't think that there is a very clear-cut UFC contender in the light heavyweight division. Now in the UFC heavyweight division, this is probably the most complicated division to go through because I could technically say that Tom Aspinall would be the next person for a UFC title shot, but he's already the interim champion, and John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, who is not the interim champion, is going to go defend and try to take the belt. It's a crazy thing. So I'm just going to leave John Jones and Stipe Miocic out of this conversation. I'm just going to, for this purpose, elevate Tom Aspinall to the relative champion. I do think that the winner of Alexander Volkov versus Cyril Gane would get the shot against Tom Aspinall. Now, the only other person I could possibly see getting in front of that is, like I said, if Magomed Ankalaev loses at light heavyweight. There's not really a picture at light heavyweight, and you bring up Alex Pereira to do the double division thing, or the triple division thing, my fault, inside the UFC heavyweight division. I do think, though, that he is going to defend against Magomed Ankalaev prior to moving up, and I do think that that's going to allow Tom Aspinall to defend against Cyril Gane or Alexander Volkov inside the heavyweight division. I think both of those guys are rightful challengers. They're going up against one another at UFC 310. That bout was originally scheduled for UFC 308, but these two individuals fought once before back in 2021, I believe, with Cyril Gane getting the decision victory, and I do think that it's going to be something close to like that. But Volkov is a great fighter. Gane's a great mover. This would be a very exciting fight considering that these two would then have to step into the lion's den with Tom Aspinall to try to beat one of the best heavyweights the world has ever seen. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please let me know what you think down below in the comment section about these title challengers for each division. In the UFC Flyweight division, I think Brandon Royval has locked himself up another UFC title shot, and it is 100% deserving considering that he's coming off a win over Tatsuro Taira and a short notice win over Brandon Moreno at UFC Mexico City. In the Bantamweight division, Umar Nurmagomedov beat Corey Sandhagen, a great win for Umar, and I do think that that thrusts him into a title bout with Merab Dvalishvili. At Featherweight, Alexander Volkanovski gets his revenge at either Ilia Topuria or possibly goes into a fort fight with Max Holloway. Arman Tsarukyan is the rightful contender in the UFC lightweight division. I do think that a fight with Islam Makhachev is next. In welterweight, I do think that Ian Gary, John Brady, Jack Della Maddalena would be 100% viable options for the title shot next, with one more win inside the organization. At middleweight, I do think that Robert Whittaker has the edge over Sean Strickland if he is able to dismantle Hamzat Chimaev at UFC 308. And if not, I do think that Strickland has a 100% deserving chance to get the shot. Magomed Ankalaev has locked up the shot at UFC light heavyweight division if he can beat Alexander Rakic at UFC 308. And the winner of Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov will take on undisputed champion Tom Aspinall if John Jones and Stipe Miocic retire. And if not, there will be a super fight with probably Jones and Aspinall eventually happening. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA. Please let me know what you think down below in the comment section about this video idea. Let me know what you think of these title challengers are true, if you think that all these guys are next, and if not, please tell me who you think is next up in line for the UFC title shot in each respectable division. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the UFC content, and while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications just so you guys can always stay updated with the most recent MMA content and news. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.